name is Valeria Silva, as you know. I'm the superintendent at St. Paul Public School. I was 25 years ago one of those students that Claire was talking about. Came here with a degree from another country, learned English, and believe it or not, I am the superintendent. And I'm still pinching myself, and it's been 9 months, and I am not showing it. First of all, Minnesota is a very unique place because across the nation, people perceive Minnesota to be German, Norwegian, very white. I hate to use the word white, but white community. And our school district is so diverse. We are much more diverse than Minneapolis in the ELL portion. We have 47% of our students right now are speaking another language than English. And not all of those are ELL students. And the ELL, English language learners, is those students who, for example, my son, when he entered kindergarten, he spoke a little bit of Spanish. And in his language questionnaire, like you do in your areas, it shows like he spoke another language. But we have about 42% of our students are English is their second or third language. I started that job as an ELL director in 1996, I think it was. It's been a long time. And I can only tell you that this is how St. Paul used to be. We used to have newcomer centers. They were in about 10 different schools. They were not attached in any way to the school. Some of those were in a portable. Some of them were in a basement. Start looking at the picture. Some of them were at the end of the hallway and in smaller classrooms. They got the last lunch. They couldn't go to the library because they were not part of the school. I can tell you this story. And when I was asked to intern for someone else doing this job, I have a vivid recollection of going to the superintendent at that time and say, believe it or not, I did say this. Do you want someone who can have a plan and change this, or do you want a bimbo to fill in the job? I cannot believe I said that. And at that time, Dr. Gaines looked at me and he says, I don't need bimbos, I need visionaries. I said, you got the right person. I am going to come up in 2 weeks with a plan, and we will talk about it. So then I came back with a plan that is now what is called collaboration. We kind of work all together. But it's not about that we're collecting the money for the bus or anything like that together. We're talking about the English language centers, which are called English language centers, or in the upper grade levels, or language academies. They are embedded in the classrooms. So those schools that had the portable outside, I took other kids to the portable. We put music and art in the portable, and our students were distributed between 2 or 3 first grade classes, usually 7 to 8 students per class, and then we had the language academy teachers receiving extensive professional development on how to, what we call in our language, scaffold the instruction. Because how do you start? How do you teach the students? And they had professional development with the ELL teacher. So during the time that they had reading instruction, the ELL teacher and the classroom teachers were working together. And it wasn't like the ELL teacher will be only serving the ELL students. It was about, as you said, it's about having a group, the groups will move, because if you surround the students with role models that speak broken English, you're not doing anything. The whole theory of osmosis, if you sit around someone who speaks English, you will learn it. It doesn't work, okay? And that was the first part that, as a system, we had to change. The whole mentality that, giving them time, they're going to learn. Yes, they did learn the social language, and I'm not sure what you covered before, but the social language is the interaction, the talking, going to the playground, but the academic language that let you, as a student, reach standard, be able to graduate and go to college and have a career, that takes up to 7 years. And, well, some people will say up to 10, depends. Students are different. If you had so what we did is we had the 10 language academies in different parts of the city. We had them the students embedded in the classroom. The teachers were working with them. And what we did is, because our district has about 113 different languages and dialects, you cannot find people who cover all the languages. So we took, at that time, the majority of the Hmong students, Spanish speakers, Somali speakers, Ethiopians, and well, now we have Korean, and we had a portion at that time in one of the sites, the Russian students. So what we did is we tried to, in a little bit of how you said it, we tried to group them at the beginning, especially for Russian or Korean, which we have like 3 at that time, but now it's much more, in the same sites. That we would have a bilingual person who would be a paraprofessional, providing them with the support and help for the family. So what we did is, the paraprofessional would have started the lesson, so the pre-teaching. Remember, it's not that I'm leading the teaching to the less qualified person, but they did the lesson in their native language, especially when it was social studies, when it was math. Then the classroom teacher or the ELL teacher or both would work with the students. So they came to the lesson and they had prior knowledge. So it wasn't like, what is she talking about? Are we talking about mountains or are we talking about water? They kind of knew. It didn't work with everybody because we didn't have everybody, but the paraprofessional had the training that in some of the cases it spoke more than one language. And then that whole team, it was the classroom teacher, the ELL teacher, and the paraprofessional spent a lot of time teaming and preparing for the lessons. So that really brought the level of confidence of the teachers who were not used to work with the students who were level 1, I mean just newcomers, into their classroom to be a little bit more open-minded. And we started the first year with 5 sites. The next year we went to 10, and now we still have 10. We went to 14 when we have the refugee camp from Thailand students coming, and then it has varied a lot. But the collaboration, what it developed, not only the possibility for the classroom teacher to learn how to teach second language learners, but it's the differentiation of the instruction. And it's something that it's very difficult for classroom teachers to do, because what they do is they teach in the middle. So the kids who are in the top grab a little bit of most of the information, but they don't go over because there's nothing taught to challenge. And the ones in the bottom, some of them are grabbing pieces of it. So what we taught the staff was to, in every area you had to differentiate. We had some students who came with prior educational background, and those students, they didn't need as much support in math that they would need it in reading. But they knew what a sentence was, the process of reading, how do you read. So then all those pieces that you teach newcomers, they were already done with some of the students. So then across the district, we started focusing on what are the assets of the ELL learners, not what are the deficits. Because that's what we have focused in the past. Oh my God, I had 5, 6 ELL students in my classroom. What am I going to do? Well, look at the asset. What do they bring to your classroom? How they can enrich the other students. How the other students can learn from it. So what we did at that time is we created, or we cultivated, a social studies curriculum around the Hmong culture, around the Somali culture. So we have it in 5 different areas. So what we did is when the teachers were teaching social studies in 1st grade, we look at the standards of 1st grade, and we embedded all the pieces that they would align to make those students to be significant contribution in the classroom, and the kids will feel very well suited to answer the questions and feel that the other students were learning. I tell you, it was powerful. We did the curriculum K3, then we did 4, 6. We created Pictionaries, as I call it, but it's not called Pictionary, but something I call it like that, which when the parents sign up, they got a Pictionary, which was a book like this with pictures and what is the word in their native language and the other. We created some videotape that the parents could go home and watch it. And at that time, it were audios, because CDs were not in existence, or maybe they were, but we couldn't afford it, or people didn't have it. I don't remember. But it was audios that they would welcome the families. And then we saw a person in the school that would be in charge of connecting with the families as much as they could. I look at this after 14 years, and I tell you that in no ways our system is perfect. And we have, because of budgetary issues, we have cut some of the support, but also we're not having the immigration number of students coming as it was in the past. So it's a mix. The question that I was asked to answer was, what are the challenges that St. Paul Public School is going to face in the future? Well, I tell you, first of all, as any school district in this country, and maybe most of the nonprofit are also feeling, is the economics. How do we do the same, or even not the same? We have to do it much better. Otherwise, we're going to get the same results, which are not excellent, and still survive under the economic situation that we are in the school districts. But also, it's not only for us as a school district, but it's also for the families. Because, unfortunately, when you look at the economics of Minnesota, many of the families that are second language learners are probably the ones who have a harder time to find a job. And I don't know, you got teenagers this summer, but my 2 kids tried to find a job. They couldn't find it. So then all those jobs that in the past nobody won, they're being used or being performed from people who are very qualified. So then the impact into the refugee community in Minnesota, and I can only talk about the Twin Cities, it's been quite large. And we had a very strong reaction from the community because they are much cultural center, so the families have helped each other. But we have a very large percentage of our students who are, quote-unquote, homeless because they are living with another family or they're moving from one house to the other. So that is really not a positive way to come to this country. And some of those families had a job, many of them had a job, and they were making a living, and now they are hurting with this. Also, we have done as a priority for the district, and now that I am the superintendent, I tell you it's very unique to find a superintendent that has an ELL background. And not only background, but really an understanding. It probably is unique. As much as other people would say, we got in all parts of this country people who speak Spanish, but that doesn't mean that you know what teaching a second language means. And people but I do understand it, and I understand the needs. So when we look at curriculum, when we look at parent involvement, when we look at all that, I see it with those eyes. And my staff is very used to see it with those eyes. So we are probably in that level, cutting edge in many, many different ways. The adult programming that we have, the Hub, it's in the last few years, I've been the Chief Academic Officer, and I was in charge of community education, which involved the Hub Center. I've been pushing and pushing for a fundamental change about what kind of instruction are we providing to our parents. What kind of possibilities? Because if you have a parent that wants to be a nurse's assistant, what kind of training can you get out of Hub Center? And then I tell you that we're very proud that we are, first of all, the largest, I was told I really had to say this. St. Paul is the largest adult education consortium in the state of Minnesota, and they are extremely proud. I would say most or all their staff get professional development, intensive professional development on how to teach second language learners. So then the expectation, you may not have a license, but you do understand what you need to do in order to reach out to the students. We have focused into our GED program, and many of you know that. We have different preparation for the second language learners that we have from people who English is their first language, because they're a different set of needs. And we also have created something they call Fast Track, which is the career path that we're trying to get the parents involved. And you probably are familiar with the fact that we have a school that is called International Academy, and that school is about 300 to 400 students, grades 9 to 12. And the example you gave, Claire, about the teacher, not all the teachers being ELL teachers. Most of the teachers in that school have double license or may not have the double license, but they know how to teach second language learners. So you will have an art teacher who is art teacher but also is licensed in ELL. And the students are going to school and they're getting credits in art, which is meeting the state requirement. In average of the students that come as newcomers in our district is about 5.5 years it takes them, which if you think about it, is not that much. And last year we graduated 65 newcomers, I would call it, and out of LEAP, and this year we did 55. And yesterday I was the proud superintendent to have the first summer graduation with cap and gowns in St. Thomas, and I tell you, it was the best way to spend my afternoon looking at those kids. And many of them, some were from LEAP, some were from other high schools, and it was a mix of the students. And 66 more kids were able to graduate and fulfill the dream of crossing the stage, having that picture, and not only that, they got the picture with the superintendent. I don't know how important that is. I stayed there, and the parents really wanted a picture with the superintendent. But what we do is we provide our teachers, and I tell you, we have lots of things in St. Paul that we have to improve. But our staff is so receptive and so open about having ELL learners in their classroom that is no longer an issue. And that is not the typical way across the state, neither across the country. And in almost to the point that because we have a new Korean population, our staff is constantly, I'm not talking about ELL staff, classroom teachers, constantly asking us to produce materials for them to learn about the Korean culture background and what they're doing. And right now we're in the process of developing a few things for the staff. So then it's about a desire to learn, a desire to grow, and also again and again, it's the asset of having ELL learners. And the reality is change does never start from a large group of people. I do remember the day I went to the superintendent's office and I said those words, and it was myself, me only. And I had one secretary and I had one teacher in special assignments. And when people say, well, there's no money, well, we don't have the staffing, it's about the will. It's about the will, and the will will take you there. Don't give up. St. Paul has tons of materials. We give them away, or we charge you the minimum for paying for the copying. We go to all the ELL conventions here, and we try to spread out the news. And the reality is, our kids, and we have something a little bit different between the kids who are immigrants and refugees to the kids who are illegal. And you mentioned it at the end, and it's a big issue in Minnesota. We don't have a lot of Latinos in Minnesota, but we have grown every year in the last 5 years the number of Latino in our district, and it will continue to grow. Because other parts of the country, as you know, they're not being very friendly, and the families are finding the best thing they can do is provide their students an education. The challenge is, when you look at our graduation rate of ELL learners, especially Hispanic students, is quite lower than you would find in other groups. First of all, when they're 16, some of them know that even if they finish and they get a degree, it doesn't matter because they cannot enter college. And it kills me. And I can't tell them to cheat because it's not the right thing to do, but the reality is those students came to this country with their parents. They were young kids. They didn't have a choice. They've been going to school. They're graduating. They meet all the standards, and they don't have a chance, not only for financial aid, it's because they need a social security to enter the college and all the other stuff. So it's something that we need to think as a system, that when adults make decisions for children, and the children were not able to make the decisions, in any other range of things, we protect the children, don't we? So you've got a parent who's in drugs, and then we protect the child. But in this case, we don't. So we are in a time in which we are scared enough going to be 1/3 or 1/4 of our national population will be Spanish speakers. So here you've got a family that you were born here, Wayne, and I was born in Colorado, no, Colorado, it could be in California, in Mexico. So I cannot go to college, but you could because you're an American citizen. So you have this disruption in the family, that the ones who can and the ones who cannot. So it's a big issue because, as you heard from President Obama, is nowadays without a post-secondary 2-year degree, you can't do much in this country. So what are we saying to 1/4 of the whole population of this country? And many of those are the children of the parents who chose to come here because it was the best thing. And if I would be in that circumstances, probably I would have done the same, because you do anything for your children. And especially those people who are working hard and they don't have a record or anything, they have contributed to all of us. So the idea is that when you're 16 and you get a chance to go to work and make some money or continue high school because you got no way to go, many of the students, especially with this economy, and I have heard it personally and talked to people, they're choosing to find a job because they need to support the family. And they actually speak English much better or almost fluent than their parents. So the chances to find a job are greater. So when you look at graduation and what is the next generation of leaders, it is scary. Because I look at myself as a Latina female who speaks Spanish, but they're in a nervous setting, there's no other female superintendent who speaks Spanish in a nervous setting. Isn't that scary? And we're looking at a future. So when you talk about the DREAM Act and all that, I'm not going to get into the politics, but it has been probably 5 years now, 4 years at least, put out there, people complain, they come back, they do it this way and that. And we have to really, really get away from politics and think about the future of this country. And I'm passionate about that. It's about the new generation of leaders. It doesn't matter what color, what language you speak, what heritage you have. When some of your ancestors came here, they survived, and here you are, probably most of you graduated with a degree in something, and you're successful. And we're saying to one group, which is very large, by the way, they also reproduce, is that, and when you look at what makes students successful in school, it's a correlation, direct correlation of parent education. So the parents don't speak the language, these kids are quitting school, they won't have a higher education in the graduation diploma, and then we are creating a cycle that our new Americans, Latinos, because they're American, will have already started school with many, many disadvantages compared to other ones. So I know I was told to speak for 15 minutes. I think I'm going a little bit more, but as a close-up, I wanted to remember, you are one, but you can get people behind you. Again and again, it's a cultural shift from many people, especially in economic situations like ours. It's going to be harder to do in a small parts of this country, I mean in the state, especially in small town, because everybody is fighting for the same jobs. But the reality is, Minnesota is the way it is because we have been a land of immigrants from the time your ancestors came. And what is the difference today? The difference today is we don't go back and say to the families, forget your native language, forget it, and teach English. That's what your ancestors did. We are one of the few countries in the world that do not expect students to speak another language. And that is ridiculous. You go other places, and when we teach languages in middle school, which is hormone times, the language is not going to sink in. I'm ready to create a sex education curriculum around second language. And I will make money, I'll tell you. If we do all the websites in Spanish for teenagers who need to know about, they will learn how to speak Spanish because it's a drive, it's a need. There's a purpose behind it. But the reality is, our kids need to keep their native language, their cultural background. It is very difficult, and I tell you myself, as a mom who is Latina, trying to keep both things. I was lucky enough to put my son in the Spanish immersion program in St. Paul, which was the first immersion program in the Midwest. But the reality is, our kids are bicultural, and they should be bilingual. And some of them are trilingual, and some of them know the American culture, their own culture, and the street culture, which is something that we forget. But that is the more powerful culture that our kids have. So thank you for inviting me, and have a great day.